What if I told you there was a more simple and easy and more efficient way to grow your business? That's the conversation that we're having on the Business Growth Blueprint podcast. Let's dive in. Hi there, BJ O'Neill. I'm your host of the podcast where we talk about all things profitability, leadership, culture, specifically designed for faith-driven business owners and entrepreneurs. All right, so let's talk about profitability. Here's why. It is a very, very natural thing to do. We all do it in business. We focus on one big number. What is that? Starts with the R, if you're not already thinking about it, revenue. Now, clearly, we have to have revenue. However, the mindset that we should have is about profitability. Here's where a lot of the struggle and the challenge comes in. We look at the profit and loss statement, right? And if you're familiar with them, you should be. If you're not, you need to work on that. But if you look at it, you go, you got revenue here, right? You have some fees, cost of goods. Then we have our operating expenses. And at the bottom of that whole thing, what do we have? Net profit. Well, the problem with the entire profit and loss statement, it's taught us to basically say the net profit's just what's left over. The challenge with that is, because of that type of thinking, it puts us in a position to go, I'm going to do all this other stuff and hope, by the way, not a strategy, I'm going to hope that I'm able to be profitable. Here's the goal. Strategically, and this should be one of the things that you develop as a muscle, is developing profitability, a mindset where we are thinking profit first. You might hear that and go, well, hold on a second. To only have profit is you have to have revenue first, and you got to have some expenses in between there. I get that, but it's about the strategies that we're going to deploy in the business. They need to directly affect profit growth and profit gain, okay? Very important. That way we're not just doing things for the sake of doing them. We got to verify that they actually have the opportunity to be able to affect growth inside of the business, okay? So, why is this important? Well, here's why. 90%, you ready? 90% of businesses, they don't make it past year 5. Why? They are overly focused on revenue and just trying to get up and do the same thing over and over and hoping it works out at some point. That's not going to get it done, and unfortunately, that's why everyone's so challenged. Second to that is, we don't look at growth strategically. And that's why the encouragement is, we want to make sure that we are thinking profitability, profitability, profitability. Some hear that in coaching sessions. I've worked with a lot of businesses over the years, and they'll hear that and they go, man, you're just always talking about money all the time. Well, guess what? This is about growing the business. And the cool thing as a person of faith, one of the hearts and the purposes behind growing the business is you have the opportunity to hire more people, pay those people better. When they get paid better, guess what? They're affecting change in the community too. You're able to give back, maybe to your church or to other causes that really matter, but you can't do any of that if there's not enough meat on the bone. Like we like to often say, where there is no margin, there is no mission. And you can do something about it, but it's all about developing a mindset of profitability. So we're going to shift. You ready for this? We're going to shift, rather than having a sales, minus our expenses gets profit. We want to be able to think about, well, what am I going to do is that I'm going to just focus on profitability. And you may even look at that and go, it's kind of a heartfelt hurt, meaning I'm not profitable enough, BJ. If you don't know this, the average net profit in America is about 8 to 10%. So if the business is doing $1 million, there's around 80 to 100 grand at the end of the day. And then in these days, that's not a lot of money. But when you can do something about it and you begin to study and you begin to focus and you begin to think about your activities and your actions today. Can you verify that those activities and those actions have anything to do with the growth or sustainability of your bottom line, that being your profit? And so we want to be able to say, okay, if I'm making, again, 100 grand in profit this year or right now, what do I need to do to tick it up a little bit to go to 120, 150, or double it, 200? And most people don't really want to embrace that because they don't know what to do. That's what we're going to change when it's all said and done. So we start from an abundance mindset. We shift away from scarcity to an abundance mindset. We want to be able to say, okay, I'm going to drive activity and action directly related to profitability. And guess what? If you've never thought this way before, if this has not been a natural thing for you to do, it's going to take some time. The whole training wheel conversation, right? But you got to start somewhere. In Proverbs 21:5, in the Bible, it says, "The plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty." I want you to think about that just for a moment. I don't know what your plans are like. Prayerfully, you do, but we see it every single day in working with businesses all over the world. We look at plans, and they've drifted way off of what they wanted to do from January 1 or whenever they started making plans, because you get busy. The tyranny of the urgent, the things that just kind of raise up. You got to take care of people. This issue happened. That machine broke. Those things are true. But you cannot lay down the mindset and the abundance mindset of driving profit inside of your business. We have one of our coaches on our coaching team. He used to own a painting company. It was a franchise. And he followed along in doing exactly what he was told to do over and over again. And we see this all the time in business growth. And spend more money in marketing, hire more people, get the best equipment, so on. Well, their revenues kept going up. Their revenues kept, year after year, kept going up, but their profits started going down and down and down. He was not being led and taught and guided on to focus on activities and actions that directly focused on the results of increased and improvements for profitability for the business, okay? And so, where do we get started, and what do we do in developing a profit-first mindset, okay? One, we got to get really good with understanding the finances of the business. Meaning, if you're not really versed in a profit and loss, look, and when there's YouTube today, this is not hard to do. You can do it. When we understand what's causing and we're seeing what's happening inside the business, what actions, what purchases, we are always need to be always in a perpetual motion of understanding where causality is at. One of our coaches was working with a client recently, and they had service technicians in the field, about 15 or so trucks in the field. Well, in the conversation about causality, he began to ask the question, how do you fuel the vehicles? Where does that come from? He goes, well, the technicians are in charge of that. What does that mean? Well, essentially, every technician had their own credit card, and they could go and get gas anywhere they wanted to go. Now, I know we want to trust people, and we should to some degree. But when we're running a business, we have to control what happens. Because if that technician, it's not his business, it's not his money, do you think that there's a chance that some of them, just by the nature of being in a hurry, I'm trying to get to the next job, I'm trying to get where I need to go to, do you think that there's a chance that maybe he might not care, they may not care as much about the cost of the fuel? There's probably a chance. But what if you were to say, okay, these vehicles, they need fuel, we're going to get a fleet card, and we're going to control where they're going to get gas. You're likely going to get it for a lot less money, okay? But not verifying a simple, small little process like that could be costing you, and it was in this case for sure. It was costing them hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year by changing one simple output. The business was the same, the product was the same, the technicians were the same, but they had never really thought about, well, should we examine how the technicians get fuel in the vehicle? So one little shift in that business, they were able to find 2 to 3% of a profit lift. by doing the same functionality. Here's the goal about profitability: small, incremental percentage increases in multiple business strategies. It's way too complicated to try to get a lot out of one area. It might happen here or there, but by and large, it's a whole lot more simple, and truly it's way more practical, truthfully, when we are doing it in small doses here, small doses there. But it requires a dedicated, disciplined attitude of a profitable mindset. That way, when you see someone making a purchase in the business, the brain should automatically go, but what does this mean about profitability? Now, look, there are going to be some seasons where we're making an investment for growth, meaning I'll use that business as an example. If that business was going to hire 5 more technicians, they're going to have to purchase 5 more vehicles or lease them, whatever they're going to do. There's going to be, that's going to hit the profit line a little different during that season. But by and large, it's about mindset. Nothing can happen until we have conquered the mindset. And then, depending upon the size of your business, if you've got 5, 10, 15 employees and a couple of them are kind of on your inner circle of leadership or whatever, you got to start training them to do the very same thing. Otherwise, they're just going to spend money and do their job the way they're asked to do so, which they should do, but they're not going to think about the profitable aspect. And by the way, just as a side note, this will be a separate episode at some point. This is where profit sharing comes in too, by the way. When you have team members, leadership, and those where they get a bonus by keeping margins where they need to be, okay? So learn your P&L and learn it well. The next thing is get really good with financial statements. This is not just the profit and loss statement. This is the balance sheet. We see it all the time where the business owner they don't really know the difference between the profit and loss statement, the balance sheet, what the differences are, why. Study, learn, and your mind will shift. It'll change for the greater good. Most people think about being profitable is just all about cutting expenses. That may be one of the strategies per se, but by itself, just cutting a little, meat off the bone, and oftentimes we cut the wrong things. We don't want to do that. We want to make improvements. We want to make investments. We want to be able to, again, expand the business, be a vibrant part of the community. You just can't do that, again, where there's no margin, there simply is no mission. So it really is all about developing a profit-first mindset. That needs to be something that you write down. Take out a pen, whether you're a digital person, a paper person, whatever it may be, take out a pen and write that down and say, I'm going to have a quest to developing a mindset of profitability. And that might feel very weird, by the way. You might go, I don't even know what that means. That's okay. You got to start somewhere. Do not get overly focused on the top line of the revenue. It's so easy to do that. You can do $1 million this year or $5 million this year, whatever the number is, and do $6 million the next year, and profits stay the same or go down. Why? Because we get overly focused on the revenue number. So I want to encourage you today. I want to challenge you today to develop a muscle about profitability. It's about, at least the way I look at it, when we look about the small percentage increases, we like to call, you'll hear this in coaching a lot, the 1% daily gains. How do I make an improvement 1% at a time? That's a lot easier to do. It's a lot easier to do. So think about it. For where you are right now, if you begin to develop a profit-based mindset, and it's something that you've never really tackled before, and you begin to work on it every single week over the next 52 weeks, think about where your business and think about just where your leadership and your management and your ownership of that business could be in only 1 year's time, which is just a vapor. It goes by tremendously fast. But you can start today in one little areas and you begin to look at different areas of the business as different strategies. Cutting cost, uniqueness in the business. Maybe we need to increase our prices. Maybe there's additional products and services that we know we could do that would automatically, overnight, nearly with our current client deck, is increase our revenues and our profits. Strategically beginning to look at things in small percentage ways will change your life. I hope that added value to you today. Until next time, take care. Hey, thanks for listening. Next episode, our discussion is all around how to handle negative and difficult team members. Subscribe now so you don't miss an episode of Business Growth Blueprint.
Access more